All right, I'm live. So I'm teaching a class right now. My name is Travis Erickson. I'm teaching a class at Appalachian State University, and it's an active wellness online class. And I thought instead of me just doing a video, I'll do a live video in case students in my class would like to ask questions in the chat or kind of wanders into the stream and wants to kind of do this. I have asked my class to ask me a few questions in advance. So I'll go through those questions today for sure, but then I'll also try to answer any questions that come up in our chat. So a little bit about me. So I've been at Appalachian State now for this is my 16th year at the university, and so I've been teaching kind of a variety of different classes, exercise science classes, physical education type classes. And then prior to being at App State, I was in Wisconsin, and at that point, I was working as a personal trainer, working as a collegiate strength coach for a university in Wisconsin, and also directed a strength and conditioning program at a university there as well. So kind of been at this whole fitness, both personal fitness and fitness or performance for athletes for quite a while. And I love working out. I love being active, and I kind of like teaching this stuff too because it's just been a big part of my life. And I think a lot of people are happier when they are active and kind of feel in control of their bodies and what they're capable of, and whether they're trying to improve their performance for a sport, they're just trying to get in better shape or lower their risk factors for disease. Physical activity obviously is very, very important. So it's something that I've been passionate about for quite a while. So I'm teaching this active wellness class, and because it's an online class, one advantage that gives students is that they can engage in whatever activities they want to. Right? It's not like I'm also teaching a volleyball class right now, and previously I've taught a weight training class, and so in those classes you're playing volleyball or you're doing weight training, right? So this active wellness class is nice because students can basically do whatever they want or whatever they have access to, and so students will keep a journal, their workout journal. They complete activities along the way to kind of help teach them, but also help motivate them and kind of be accountability partners, so to speak, as they go through things. And so this video here is designed to help because it's a general education kind of a course. Students don't generally come into this class with a great deal of background regarding their knowledge of fitness and exercise, just probably whatever they learned in high school and what they might have picked up being part of a sport in those cases. And so um, that's a big barrier oftentimes for people to be involved in activities. They don't know um, where to get started, right? What do I do? Am I doing the wrong thing? Am I wasting my money buying equipment that I'm never going to use, or that sort of thing? And so these kind of PE classes for college students seem kind of crazy at first when you think about it, right? It's like, why are college kids taking PE classes? But it's to kind of build upon whatever they were involved with, maybe as high school or even in junior high or grade school. Like being physically active is an important part of our culture. And unfortunately, as Americans, we're not always the healthiest people, right? So we don't eat super well. We don't always are not active as much as we should be, and so it's obviously a big issue in our country. And so these college courses are designed to try to help alleviate some of that burden that we run into. So let me run through some of these questions that I've got for us. I'm going to put them in the chat so that people can access them a little bit easier. So this was the first question. It might be too big to put in the chat because too many letters. I'll just read it instead. So the first question I had from one of my students was, says many fitness influencers say that hitting 10,000 steps a day can help lose weight along with a good diet. And the question for me then is, do you think 10,000 steps every day, or at least trying to meet the goal, can help without any other fitness training? So this is actually a good question because it kind of speaks to a concept in fitness or exercise science known as the NEAT, NEAT, which stands for non-exercise activity thermogenesis. That's why it has an acronym, because no one wants to say those whole things. What does that mean? So what it means is that just by being alive, we burn a certain number of calories. That's a kind of our basal or our resting metabolic rate. So, to keep the blood flowing, to keep our heart pumping, to keep our brain doing what it needs to do, we're going to burn a certain number of calories. But then in addition, on top of that, moving around, whether it just be walking without specifically trying to walk for exercise, but just being active. If you're kind of a person that's kind of a fidget where you kind of can't sit still a lot of times, you're burning more calories when you're engaged in those non-exercise sorts of things. So this whole concept of 10,000 steps a day is kind of playing into that a little bit, in that if a person is not intentionally active, they might still be active, right? So they're not exercising per se, but they're still being active and they're still burning calories. They're burning calories above and beyond that basal or that resting metabolic rate. So the question here then is that, can a person stay in shape? Can they get into shape without intentionally trying to be active as long as they're hitting those 10,000 steps a day? And the answer is to some degree, yes. I mean, right, because it's certainly better than hitting only 2 or 3,000 steps a day if you're totally inactive, right? So any sort of activity you generate above and beyond your resting level is good for you because it allows you to work muscles that wouldn't normally be worked. It means you're going to burn more calories than you burn if you weren't doing any activity. And so it does allow you to kind of, our bodies were meant to be active. We're meant to be moving, right? And so our skeletal structure and our muscles that support it, those are all designed to kind of be active and move. So like it's like if you had an old car and all you did was have that car sit in the garage all day long and you never drove it. But at a certain point in time, that car starts to, it doesn't run as well, right? And all the gaskets and all the tubes and stuff, they dry out because that car needs to be driven. Your body needs to be moved. So if I am not involved in any kind of activity, I'm hurting my body because it wants to be active, it wants to move. So, but to a finer point of this question is, can that help with a person that's trying to get in better shape if all they're trying to do is hit those steps and not really trying to engage in any other activity? The answer is it's better than nothing for sure, right? If that goal, if wearing a physical activity monitor, or watch, or whatnot, if that helps that person kind of be more active, they'll generally be healthier. And actually, one of the weird things that can happen is that when people that aren't very active begin an activity program, they begin an exercise program. They say, I'm going to start walking, more often, or I'm going to go for a run, or I'm going to join this health club and start working out. Is that it's human nature that we look at what we did. We say, okay, I did this activity. I'm going to now reward myself, right? I went for this run. I was good. I'm going to go reward myself. And so, how is that reward manifested? Oftentimes, for people that manifest as food, right? They go in the head and they start deciding they want to reward themselves by eating a treat. Well, that's kind of counterproductive. That person's trying perhaps to lose some weight or get in better shape. Those foods that they choose may not always be healthy food choices. On the other hand, a person that's not intentionally exercising, but they're just trying to be more active, they're just trying to hit those 10,000 steps a day, they potentially might be less likely to reward themselves with those unhealthy foods because it's becoming part of their life, right? So that's sort of where this whole 10,000 steps a day kind of can come in for somebody, is that if you're normally only hitting 6,000 steps a day and nothing else about your life changes as far as your food consumption, let's say, and now all of a sudden you're starting to try to now hit 10,000 steps a day, but everything else remains equal, you will end up being a healthier person because you are now more active. At the end of the day, if a person's trying to become more fit, oftentimes it's trying to change their body composition. They're trying to increase the amount of muscle mass in their body or decrease the percent body fat in their body, that kind of thing. So if in order to do that, we have to have a difference between the number of calories you burn, your caloric expenditure versus your caloric consumption. And so those two things, if they're in balance, if more or less you're burning the same number of calories you're consuming, you're going to remain at about the same body weight or body mass. If over time you're burning more calories than you're consuming, that person's body weight should over time gradually start to decrease as your body adjusts to the lower number of calories it's consuming in relation to the number it's burning. But your body has ways to kind of trick you, right? Your body doesn't want to be in that deficit long if it doesn't have to. It'll modify its own metabolism and it will start to slow things up or speed things down in order to kind of, even if they're not exactly equal, the scale weight might remain the same for a long period of time. So consistency becomes very, very important over time in order to kind of see those fitness changes. And so I think the goal of the 10,000 steps a day is a good goal, but that number is just a number. I mean, 10,000 is a great round number, right? For a certain person, 10,000 might be more than they can handle. If they're only doing 3 or 4,000 steps a day, Maybe they want to search for an intermediate goal, 6,000 steps or 7 or 8,000 steps, gradually working themselves up to 10,000 steps. The person's already pretty active on a given day and they're already hitting 10,000 steps normally, but they want to become more active, then they're going to need to kind of maybe bump that number up a little bit. So the 10,000 steps is just a number, but it can help quantify the activity you're involved in. So I think in the long run, I think it can be very helpful for people, but it can't be the only thing you're obviously doing. That your diet and the other activities you're involved in can make a difference for you as well. Let's see. So that was a question about 10,000 steps a day. Let's do this question next. It says, is it good to mix different types of exercises in one session? So I think we're looking at like a lifting workout, potentially going to the gym, right? So for example, I like to do a little cardio and strength training in the same session. Can a person do that? Is it good to do both cardio and resistance training or strength training in the same session? Or would it be better to separate the different types for different days? So what we're looking at here is what's the advantage or disadvantage of doing both cardio and resistance training in the same workout session. So in general, right, your body is going to respond, it's going to adapt specifically to the sorts of things you ask it to do. So if you ask your body to do mostly cardiovascular conditioning, your cardiovascular system is going to adapt the most. Your heart is going to uh, beat more efficiently. Your lungs are going to be able to reoxygenate blood cells more efficiently, and your resting heart rate is going to lower. All the blood pressure is going to reduce. All those sorts of good things will start to happen because you're involved in regular aerobic or cardiovascular exercise. Resistance training is kind of the opposite in terms of you're not really working your heart as much, although your heart will get a benefit from resistance training. Is that in resistance training, you're exercising specific muscle groups typically. Maybe it's a leg day or it's upper body day or it's working pulling muscles or pushing muscles, right? And so those workouts, your body will respond specifically to the specific type of workout that you're doing. So the question here then becomes, am I better off doing my cardio session by itself and then at a different time doing my resistance training session? Or is it okay or even better to do them both together? And again, it kind of depends upon what your goals are. If your goals are to primarily increase your aerobic conditioning, your aerobic fitness, you're better off primarily focusing on doing aerobic conditioning for that workout session. If on the other hand, you know that your strength is not where it needs to be and you want to increase your strength, you're better off focusing on doing strength. For a lot of people, they need a combination of both of those things, right? And so there's not a problem with doing both those things in a given workout session. But at the end of the day, what you want to think about doing is create a plan for yourself in your head. You want to have a goal as far as what you're trying to accomplish, not only overall, but also what is your goal on that given day in that workout session. So, you might choose in a given week, you might say, I'm going to try to work out 4 days a week. Okay, that's my goal. I'm going to do 4 days a week. One of those days, I'm going to do a combination of cardiovascular conditioning and resistance training. One of those days is going to be only aerobic conditioning, and one day is only going to be resistance training. And the fourth day could be whatever I kind of feel like I need to do the most. Maybe I just let myself kind of pick however I feel on that given day, which isn't the best plan necessarily. But if being flexible allows you to make sure you go to the gym and do what you need to do, then you can do that kind of thing. Or maybe that fourth day, say, I'm going to do a combination of both in that day. But before you begin that workout session, before you enter that week, have an idea in mind of what your goal is on each of those given workout days you plan to have for yourself. Now, one thing that is important to kind of think about would be the intensity of those workouts. You generally want to try to have your most intense stuff, the hardest stuff to do earliest in your workout and have the easier stuff at the end. Your body only has so much energy and only can keep up an activity for so long. And so if I know that the hardest part of my workout is the lifting part, because I'm going to try to go kind of heavy or whatever, you're best off warming up and doing that lifting part first and then doing your cardio stuff second. But it doesn't always have to be that way, right? If my goal is more about like, I'm going to try to lower how fast I can run a mile, or I want to be able to run continuously for 2 miles or whatever, then if that's your main goal, then have that be the focus of that workout. Have the running part of your workout or the elliptical or whatever it is you're doing, do that stuff first and then do your lifting stuff second. Now, your lifting stuff might kind of suffer a bit because you're already a little bit fatigued from your running workout that you did previously. But if the running part was the most important part for you, then it's called the priority principle. And it can apply to the sorts of workouts you're doing. It can also apply to maybe the body parts you're working. If I'm doing purely a strength training workout, the stuff I want to work the most, ideally you do that stuff first in that workout. If I want to mainly focus on my legs, do your legs before your upper body because that's your priority. You got the most energy, the most juice in your body early on. Do those things at the start of that workout. So it's not really a great answer, right? Because I'm not saying like one way is better than the other, but think about what your primary goal or goals are and have that dictate how you want to have that workout progress for yourself. Because different sorts of workouts will give you different sorts of benefits. Um, but there's nothing necessarily wrong with doing both cardio and resistance training in the same workout. It's just that if you know that your lifting workout is going to be really, really strenuous, very heavy weights, that kind of thing, probably don't want to proceed those things with a lot of cardio because it's going to curtail the benefits or the amount of weight you're going to lift in that resistance training workout. So pay attention to your own inner body battery and figure out like how much can I really work out and how much time is it going to take me to do this, how much time is it going to take me to do that. At the same time, I'll mention one last thing here is that you don't have to just do cardio first and strength training last, right? You could mix and match. You could do cardio for say 5 minutes, right? Then do a little bit of lifting, then go back and do some cardio for 5 more minutes and do some lifting. So you don't have to just separate them entirely. You could mix and match. Even within resistance training itself, with the weight room kind of workout, you can do circuit training, right? Where you do one lift and then you go right to the next lift and then right to the next lift. So you kind of create a circuit for yourself in which the weights you're lifting aren't incredibly heavy. The idea is you're doing lots of repetitions and it ends up being a cardio sort of workout for yourself. You're working your muscles, not to the extent you would if you're going really, really heavy with anything, but you are working your muscles, but you're also then creating a harder workout for your heart and your cardiovascular system. So you can get both. And that's one thing I would say is in favor of resistance training over kind of purely cardio workouts is that you can gain a benefit for both your cardiovascular system and your muscular system, if you will, through resistance training. But if you're doing purely cardio exercises, it's hard to kind of have a lot of change in your muscular strength. Now, the argument can be made like things like swimming or rowing will end up working your muscles a lot too, but not in the same way as that pure resistance training would in terms of gaining strength. But so hopefully that answer it kind of goes all over the place, but hopefully that kind of helps you understand that you can kind of do both in a given workout session. All right, I got two more questions that I want to hit up here. Let's do. So this question is very, very similar, and I kind of already answered it to some degree. It says, well, I was wondering if it's better to do cardio before strength training or after strength training. I've heard people say cardio after strength helps burn fat, but I've always been curious. So let's talk about this whole fat burning part of this equation. Um, your body, our bodies, want to primarily burn sugar, the carbohydrates that you eat. So the three primary macronutrients that we consume in the foods we eat are carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. All three have sort of different purposes, but all three can be used as fuel for activity, but at different kind of priority levels. So carbohydrates, the primary role of carbohydrates is to fuel our bodies. And the reason for that is that any carbohydrates we eat, rice, pasta, cereal, whatever it is, those sorts of things can be broken down very, very easily into the sugars that your body needs to then convert into energy to do the activities that we need to do because they are sugars, right? So it's easy for your body to take sugars, no matter what kind of sugars they are, whether they be complex carbohydrates or simple carbohydrates. Your body can relatively easily break those sugars down into your body's own preferred sugar source, which is called glucose or glycogen, and then convert those into its own kind of universal energy source, which we'll want to get too much into that. But your body can really, really efficiently, easily break down carbohydrates into its preferred energy source. Fat, it's harder for your body to do that, but it can. It can take stored body fat and it can, through a process that's more complicated for your body to undergo, it can convert the stored fat also into fuel, into sugars. And lastly, your body can also break proteins down into sugars as well. But again, that's kind of your priority order. Carbohydrates are your main energy source. Fats can be used for that, and proteins they can be, but they're also not great. Fats are better for fats get very much highly involved in like hormone synthesis and tissue remodeling, that sort of thing. Proteins are all about like building your muscles up and building processes in your body, amino acids. That's kind of the building block of all the proteins. And so each macronutrient kind of has a preferred thing it does, but each of them can be used as an energy source for you. So the question on this talks about like, well, does the order in which I do resistance training and cardio training influence how my body burns fat? And the answer is sort of a not in the way you think it does. And so because your body prefers to burn carbohydrates, that's what's going to go to first. Your body stores glucose and glycogen in your muscles and also in your liver. It's going to work through that energy source first. And once that starts to deplete, your body will then dig into fat reserves and use that as an energy source. Additionally, the more intense the exercise is, if you're running faster versus slower, if you're lifting weights versus not lifting weights or whatever, your body will also prefer to use stored carbohydrates or sugars. Fats will be used with lower intensity activities. Okay, so like going for a longer hike, body might use fat more than that in those cases because again, can't efficiently break fat down. So your body, there's kind of two things going on at once here. First, your body will primarily prioritize carbohydrates, and if the workout intensity is pretty high, also carbohydrates are going to be a preferred energy source. So higher intensity and early on in your workout, your body's going to use carbohydrates. As that workout goes on and you start to deplete your body of stored sugar and intensity potentially gets lower because you're going for a longer time, your body then will start digging into fat reserves and burn fat for energy. And so this is where this notion of working out right away, first thing in the morning, like in a fasted state, helps burn fat more than sugar, which I guess is true because your body doesn't have a lot of stored sugar when you first wake up in the morning if you haven't eaten. So your body will primarily will have to kind of use fat to get the job done. Also, the longer that workout goes, your body will also start to use fat more because it's run out of sugars at that point. And lower intensity workouts will also kind of do that as well. So that sounds like that's totally how you should do this. If you want to burn fat, that's what you should do. But this all goes back to the things we talked about at the very start, which is the idea that at the end of the day, if a person's trying to change their body composition around, they're trying to reduce their percent body fat, over the course of the day, we have to create a caloric deficit between the calories that you've consumed and the calories that you've burned. Your burned calories consistently need to be higher than the calories that you're consuming. If they're not, if they're kind of in, if they're even, it doesn't matter whether your preferred fuel source is fat or carbohydrates because at the end of the day, it's a calorie game at that point. So one of the problems that you run into then is that if we do these lower intensity workouts in order to make our bodies burn body fat, or we work out in a fasted state when we don't have a lot of stored sugar, we can't work out really hard. And that means then we're not going to burn as many calories per unit of time. So if I do a half hour workout, if all I've got available to me is a half hour of workout, I might want to kind of have that half hour. I want to get the most out of it that I can and still not hate my life, right? So if I only have a half hour to work out, am I better off running if I can run for half an hour, or am I better walking? Well, if my goal is to burn lots of calories, I'm better off running, even though running is going to primarily burn sugars and not fats. And walking, if it's slow enough, my body might use fat to kind of fuel that workout source because the intensity is very low. But that half hour running, I might have just burned 500 or 600 calories, where a half hour of walking, I might only burn 200 calories. You do that over the course of a week, 4 different times, it's looking at a difference of like 1,000 calories in the course of a week. And so don't fall in the trap of thinking that your workouts have to be in the fat burning zone in order for you to lose body fat, because your body will naturally burn its stored body fat as fuel whenever there is a caloric deficit. Your body wants to survive. We are on this planet still because our body's figured out how to remain alive even when we don't have our preferred energy source available to us. When we haven't had a lot of food to eat, we have body fat stores that we can call upon to allow us to kind of keep going and keep doing things. And if that runs out, we can use protein, which is not great because then you're starting to actually break down muscle tissue and muscle in order. You don't want to do that, right? That's a whole other topic, crash diets and whatnot. We don't want to go there. So don't be thinking too much about like, what am I trying to burn, fats versus carbohydrates? Just be thinking about, from a realistic perspective, what you're capable of doing. Think about trying to get the most out of that workout as far as burning the right number of calories based upon your current fitness level. Okay. So the answer in the short answer would be, is it better to do cardio before strength training? You'd be better off doing your cardio after strength training for the most part, because generally speaking, your strength training is the more intense kind of thing, and you can finish with your cardio at the end. But again, like I said, if your goal is you want to really get better, you want to have more wind available to you to kind of do the cardiovascular things. If you're training to run a 5K, or if you're wanting to do this big hike or whatever, it's like, well, then you should do the cardio stuff first because that's your priority. Don't worry about fat versus carbohydrates and blah, 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 that kind of stuff. All right, I've got one more question to hit here. It says, this person says, I know that form is a big part of strength training. What would be the best way to learn and master the best form for each exercise? Well, the best way would be to work with someone who can help teach you and evaluate your own technique in those trainings, right? So we're talking about a fitness trainer, a personal trainer, some kind of a coach at a gym environment that is qualified. That person themselves needs to know what the correct form and technique looks like, and has to be able to make corrections for you. And you need to feel comfortable working with that person in order to have them work on your technique. This is one of the reasons why in gyms, machines exist. Now, I'm not saying machines versus free weights. We're not going to kind of fight that battle here because they both have their place. But oftentimes, beginning lifters will use machines first because machines kind of make it easier for you to do, because there's not much you can do wrong. Although we've all seen videos on YouTube of very unusual techniques in machines, right? Using machines for things they weren't involved for. So, but if you want to get into free weights, which free weights are great because they work your muscles differently because you have to balance and stabilize different things, but they're more complicated, right? I mean, because you can really hurt yourself with a free weight exercise, right? You can literally die doing a free weight exercise, right? If a bar falls on you, it's like that's bad news, right? So that's scary for a lot of people. They never want to touch a free weight because they're scared for their safety, or they're just scared of doing it wrong. Whereas machines are kind of a nicer, safer way to kind of get into the hobby because they help guide you through the thing. But the thing I would encourage you to think about is that there's a lot of different variables at play in a resistance training workout. One of the variables that most people think about right away is the choice of exercise. Like, what am I going to do? I want to work my legs. What am I going to do? Well, I got this leg press over here. I've got a hack squat over there. I could do barbell front squats. I could do back squats. I could do all sorts of different things. But what should I be doing? And so that's the choice part of this. Like, what lifts should you be doing? And if you only know a few different lifts, you have a very small selection. I like to think about when you go into the gym. First of all, have a plan, have an idea of what you're planning to do that day. If you're going to go lift, what body parts am I trying to work? What's my overall goal today? Am I working on trying to improve my strength? Am I trying to improve my muscle tone or definition? Am I trying to get my muscles to have a little bit more endurance to them? Not cardiovascular endurance, but like muscular endurance. So think about those sorts of things, and then think about like, well, how much? Because that will dictate then, like, well, how many repetitions am I going to do? How many sets am I going to do? What's my rest periods going to be between my sets? What order am I going to do these workouts? And there's so many different variables at play besides just the choice of exercise that you do. So be thinking about your choice as like a salad bar. If you are not a picky eater and you go to a salad bar or a buffet, if you will, everything is available to you, right? Everything is tasty. You can get in there. It's overwhelming, right? It's everything is available to you because you like everything. But if you're a pickier eater, or if you go to that buffet knowing like there's certain things that you know you want to eat, you're going to an Indian buffet and you're like, I'm going to get some tandoori chicken and I'm going to get some naan bread. And that's my priority, right? So you know right away, I'm going to shoot for that's my choice is regarding my food choices. Now, the problem you run into then is that that person that kind of prioritizes those foods that they already know and love, they might ignore foods that they probably would like or would be good for them because they're scared of trying something new. The same thing can happen in a weight room is that you might be looking around the weight room like, well, I know how to do that lift. I know how to do that one. I like doing that one. And all of a sudden, you're sticking to the same six exercises every single time you go into work out. You might have perfect technique on those six exercises. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But you always do the same ones. Now all of a sudden you've got body parts you're maybe not training, or you're overtraining the same body parts over and over again. So when you work with a person, ideally, it could be a friend that just is a pretty good lifter, right? I mean, that might be all you need is find someone who you trust, who you believe can teach you the correct way to do these things. And short of that, if you don't have someone that you feel like you can trust or feel like they know what they're doing, then I would very much advocate that if you're able to, look at getting some either group fitness training, like get a workout buddy and say, hey, we're going to hire this trainer together and they're going to teach us new lifts or one-on-one training sessions, right? Oftentimes, a lot of gyms, especially like student rec centers and stuff, they have relatively inexpensive personal training available for those people because they know most students don't have a lot of money. They can't afford to be spending 50, 60 bucks an hour for a personal trainer. I think here at our university, they charge 15 or 20 bucks, or they can buy a package like 5 sessions for like $75, which is really, it's comparatively speaking, it's inexpensive. And I know that for not everyone, that's may not be inexpensive for them, right? But that's probably your best way would it talk with an expert, have that expert show you different exercises, have them tell you why this lift is a good lift, have them indicate to you what muscle groups this exercise works. They should also be qualified in order to be able to teach you like, well, when would I do this exercise in a workout session? If I'm learning how to do front squats and I'm learning how to do deadlifts, is there one I should be doing before the other in a workout session, right? If I'm being taught how to do a Romanian deadlift or a standing good morning or a standing or a seated calf raise, like when should I do those things, right? A good certified, qualified personal trainer should be able to not only teach you the correct technique, but also teach you the other kind of variables that go into a resistance training workout. So beyond just the choice and the technique of the lift, but like, well, how many reps should you look to do for this lift if your goal is strength, or if my goal is muscular hypertrophy, if my goal is muscular endurance? When should I do those things? How is rest? A personal trainer is more than just a technique specialist. They better be. They should also be teaching you about the fundamental principles of program design when it comes to getting a workout. Why are rest periods only 60 seconds just between these two exercises? And why is it 2 minutes for these? Why am I only doing 6 repetitions for this lift, but you're having to do 12 for this exercise? If they can't explain why those things are in place, what the differences between those things are, probably not the trainer you want to have available to you because you want to learn more than just the technique. You want to learn what goes into them. There's plenty of great workouts you can find out online, right? And that may be where this kind of question comes from is like, okay, I found this great list of workouts, right? I asked an AI tool to make me workouts because AI does a pretty decent job kind of creating some workouts, but AI doesn't really teach you how to do the lifts, right? But you also want to be at certain points if you become, a seasoned lifter, you want to not only expand your palette for your salad bar of exercises, your buffet of exercises. You want to also start to understand when should I do certain lifts, how many days a week should I do those things, when should they occur in my workout, beginning, middle, or end. Am I better off doing higher or lower repetitions for these things? Then you can start to really get into neat exotic concepts like clusters and exhaust sets and supersets and like circuit workouts we talked about and drop sets. And there's so many fun, super exciting ways you can modify a resistance training workout beyond just learning about lots and lots of different lifts. So I would encourage anyone to just kind of educate themselves or find someone that can educate you on how these different exercises work together in order to kind of get the most out of them. And that's kind of what the whole goal was here, right? Is to try to figure out what we can do in order to uh, kind of get the most out of our time that we spend. So we're not scared of going to a gym or going and looking stupid and not getting the most out of it, or hurting ourselves, right? And so it takes a little bit of knowledge on the front end, and that investment you make in a class like this, or a personal trainer that can help you kind of get started, is invaluable because it gives you the confidence to keep going and keep doing this sort of thing. So I'll leave it at that. Those are the 4 questions that my class asked me. I think that's hopefully I kind of answered them, probably over answered them, but I would encourage anyone on this channel that kind of stumbles upon this, shoot me a question if you'd like to on YouTube. I'll put a bunch of questions together. Look at maybe do another Ask Me Anything regarding fitness and exercise, just kind of practical tips from someone who worked in the industry for a long time and has been active for a long time. Just trying to give you kind of stuff that you can take away with and use, as opposed to just kind of theoretical nonsense, which probably did give you some theoretical nonsense today, but hopefully some practical suggestions that you can kind of get into for your own workouts. All right. Thanks for paying attention. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you learned something. I'll try to be back with some more of these sorts of things.